The truth about Duane "Dog" Chapman is that no amount of toughness protects you from the things that really hurt. And what really happened to Dog the Bounty Hunter is a story about grief, loss, and a man desperately searching for peace he cannot seem to hold on to. If you watched television in the mid-2000s, you know exactly who Dog Chapman is. That unmistakable look, the long blonde hair, the leather vest, the wraparound sunglasses, the silver chains catching the Hawaiian sun. That gravelly voice, equal parts preacher and street fighter, that could deliver a sermon and a takedown in the same breath. Every Tuesday night on A&E, millions of Americans settled in to watch Dog the Bounty Hunter. And what they got was something nobody expected from a reality show. They got a family. A loud, complicated, fiercely loyal family that argued and prayed and chased fugitives across the island of Oahu and somehow made it all look like love. And at the center of that family, always, was Beth. Beth Chapman, with her platinum hair and her fearless mouth, and her absolute refusal to be anything other than exactly who she was the heart of the whole operation. She was the reason the show worked. She was the reason Dog worked. Those of us who watched every week could see it, even through the cameras, the way he looked at her, the way he reached for her hand, the way two people who had been through everything together move through the world like they share the same set of lungs. We watched them for years and we thought we knew them. But the story of what has really happened to Dog Chapman, the full story, from the beginning to right now, is so much harder and so much more human than the version the cameras ever managed to capture. It starts not in Hawaii, not on a television set, but in a house in Denver, Colorado, where a boy was learning the wrong lessons about what it means to be a man. Duane Chapman was born on February 2, 1953, and by the time he was 16 years old, he had already decided that the world inside his father's house was not survivable. His father, Wesley, was a man whose idea of discipline came through pain. His mother, Barbara, prayed for peace. The prayers were not enough. At 16, Duane ran straight into a motorcycle gang called the Devil's Disciples, where he traded Sunday school for survival and learned in the hardest possible school exactly who he was. He ended up in a Texas prison in the late 1970s on an accessory to murder charge. He had been in the car when a friend pulled the trigger. 18 months inside those walls did something unexpected to him. It gave him a purpose. A prison officer told him he had the instincts of a bounty hunter. Duane Chapman filed that away and never forgot it. When he walked out of those gates in 1978, he began building something from nothing. He started chasing fugitives across Colorado and Hawaii with nothing but street instincts and a personal conviction that everyone deserved a second chance, because he had needed one so badly himself. By 2003, when he tracked down fugitive Andrew Luster in Mexico, and the story made global headlines, the world finally had a name for the man who had been chasing redemption his entire life. Dog Chapman had arrived. The cameras loved Dog Chapman, and for a while, the feeling was mutual. Dog the Bounty Hunter premiered on A&E in 2004 and became one of the most watched reality shows on American television. Viewers who had never given a second thought to bounty hunting found themselves completely invested in the Chapman family. The arguments, the arrests, the prayers said over handcuffed fugitives in parking lots, the way Dog and Beth operated like two halves of a single unstoppable force. It felt real because it was real. That was always the power of it. But fame at that scale carries a weight that very few people are prepared for. And in 2007, that weight came crashing down. A private phone call was leaked to the press. In it, Dog was heard using a deeply offensive racial slur while talking to his son Tucker about Tucker's girlfriend. The recording spread instantly. A&E suspended the show without warning. Sponsors withdrew. The public, which had spent 3 years rooting for this man, felt betrayed in a way that was both swift and unforgiving. Dog went on CNN. He sat in front of the cameras and he apologized. Not in the managed press release way that celebrities are coached to apologize, but visibly shaken, genuinely struggling to explain how a word that vile had come out of the mouth of a man who claimed to believe in redemption. He asked for forgiveness. He said he was ashamed. He meant it. Whether or not people believed him was another matter entirely. A&E brought the show back after several months. The ratings recovered, but something had shifted in the way the public looked at Dog Chapman. A hairline fracture in the image that no amount of good television could fully repair. The show ran until 2012. By the time it ended, Dog was 59 years old and visibly tired in a way that had nothing to do with chasing fugitives. The spotlight that had made him a household name had also exposed every flaw, every mistake, every private moment of ugliness that most people get to keep to themselves. He had traded his privacy for fame, and now that the fame was dimming, he was left holding the bill. And then, in 2017, the thing happened that nothing, not prison, not scandal, not the slow erosion of a television career, had prepared him for. Beth went to the doctor, and the doctor found cancer. Stage 2 throat cancer. Spreading. Real. The kind of news that reorganizes every single priority a person has ever held and makes everything that came before it feel, in an instant, completely beside the point. Duane Chapman, the man who had made a career of being afraid of nothing, was terrified. What most people didn't know was how completely Beth Chapman was the architecture of Duane's life. It is easy, watching the show, to see the dynamic on the surface. Duane out front, big and loud and physical, Beth behind the desk or at his shoulder, managing the paperwork and the people and the invisible thousand things that keep an operation running. What the cameras did not fully convey was that without Beth, Duane did not entirely know how to exist. He had said it himself, in interviews over the years, that she was the first person who had ever truly seen him, not the television character, not the bounty hunter legend, not the man with the catchphrases and the leather vest, the actual man underneath all of it, with his prison record and his failed marriages and his childhood full of bruises he had spent a lifetime trying to explain away. Beth had looked at all of that and chosen him anyway. 40 times over, she had chosen him. What most people also didn't know was the degree to which Beth's illness was not a quiet, private battle. She made it public deliberately, with the same fierce refusal to hide that had defined her entire life. She filmed Duane's Most Wanted while she was sick. Genuinely sick, in pain that anyone watching closely could see in the way she moved and the careful way she chose her words. She did it because she refused to let cancer define what she was or was not capable of doing. Duane watched all of it and felt helpless in a way that he had never felt before. He was a man who had built his entire identity around action, around the ability to physically move toward a problem and solve it. And this problem could not be solved. He could not chase this one down. Beth was declared cancer-free at the end of 2017, and if you watch Duane's face in any interview from that period, you can see exactly what that news meant to him. The relief was so total, it looked almost like grief in reverse. But in late 2018, the cancer came back, this time in her lungs. On June 26, 2019, Beth Chapman died in Honolulu. She was 51 years old. Duane was holding her hand. Her last words to him, according to those who were present, were simply, "Let me go." Duane Chapman, who had survived prison and scandal and public humiliation and more personal loss than most people accumulate in a lifetime, did not know how to let her go. He has said, openly and without embarrassment, that in the months following her death, he thought about ending his life, that the grief was that total, that the absence was that complete. A blood clot was discovered in his lungs that nearly killed him before the year was out. His body was doing what grief sometimes does, turning inward, attacking itself, as if it agreed that there was no longer any particular reason to keep going. He kept going anyway, not because he felt ready to, not because the pain had eased, but because enough people around him, his children, his doctors, his faith, kept insisting that he stay. The world watched Duane Chapman grieve, and some of what they saw made them uncomfortable. In early 2020, photographs surfaced of Duane spending time with Moon Angel, a woman who had been Beth's former assistant and a longtime family friend. The reaction was immediate and unkind. His own daughter Lisa publicly called Moon a homewrecker. Strangers on the internet delivered their verdicts with the swift certainty that social media encourages. Duane, still raw and disoriented from loss, defended the friendship, and then, in what he himself later admitted was a moment of poor judgment, proposed to Moon on live television during an appearance on the Dr. Oz show. She said no. Duane said later that he had not been serious, that he had wanted to see how the world would react. The world reacted badly, and the episode added a layer of public embarrassment onto a grief that was already almost too heavy to carry. But then, something quiet happened, the way the things that actually matter tend to happen. Duane called a phone number looking to hire a landscaper. A woman named Francie Frayne answered. She was a Colorado rancher whose husband had recently died of cancer. The two strangers ended up talking for a long time, not about landscaping, but about loss. About what it feels like to love someone through a terminal illness, and then find yourself standing on the other side of it alone. About faith, and whether it holds up under the kind of weight they had both been asked to carry. Grief, when two people share it honestly, has a way of creating a particular kind of intimacy. Duane and Francie began talking regularly. The conversations became something neither of them had expected. By May of 2020, he had proposed. In September of 2021, they married in a private ceremony in Colorado. The criticism came, as it always does. People said it was too soon. People said he was disrespecting Beth's memory. Dog's response was characteristically direct. He said that Francie understood his grief because she had lived her own version of it. That when they talked about their late spouses, they healed a little each time. That loving someone new was not a betrayal of the person you had lost. It was, he believed, what the person you had lost would have wanted for you. Not everyone accepted that, but Dog Chapman has never lived his life by committee. Together, he and Francie built something new. They moved to Georgia, founded the Dog Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping survivors of human trafficking with housing, counseling, and life skills. And Dog began appearing at Christian gatherings, speaking about second chances and the specific grace that comes from surviving things that should have destroyed you. But peace, as Dog himself has said more than once, never stays long. In July of 2025, tragedy visited the family again. Francie's son Gregory allegedly accidentally shot and killed his own 13-year-old son Anthony in a terrible domestic accident. Dog and Francie released a statement describing it as incomprehensible. Dog told a close friend he had no words, only prayer. For a man who has buried a daughter, nearly lost his own life, and watched his partner die by degrees, there is something almost unbearable about this pattern. And yet he is still standing. At 72 years old, Duane "Dog" Chapman is not the man he was on that A&E television set. He moves more slowly. He speaks more carefully. The leather vest has been traded on many occasions for the quieter uniform of a man who has decided that faith is more important than image. He prays publicly and without embarrassment. He talks about Beth with the open tenderness of someone who has stopped trying to protect himself from how much he misses her. His children, all 13 of them, biological and adopted, scattered across various degrees of estrangement and reconnection, carry his legacy in ways that are sometimes painful to observe. His son Leland bounty hunts. His daughter Lisa has built her own life on her own terms. His son Tucker has retreated from public view entirely. Others have struggled with addiction, with legal trouble, with the particular difficulty of growing up in a household where the cameras were always on and the chaos was always real. Dog has never pretended that his parenting was perfect. How could he, given his own beginning? A man whose first education in fatherhood was a wooden paddle, and a father with a violent temper, does not automatically know how to do it differently. He made mistakes. He has said so, publicly and specifically, more than once. What he has also done, and this is perhaps the thing worth holding on to, is kept showing up, through the scandal and the grief and the bad television, and the public humiliations and the losses that kept coming regardless of whether he was ready for them. He kept showing up. Dog the Bounty Hunter ran for 8 seasons and made him one of the most recognizable faces on American television. But what endures is not the show. What endures is something smaller and more honest. The image of a man holding his dying wife's hand in a Honolulu hospital room and choosing, despite everything, to keep living. He said something recently that has stayed with people who heard it. He said, "I used to hunt fugitives. Now I hunt for peace." That sentence contains his entire life. A boy who ran from a violent home. A young man who ended up in prison for a crime he did not commit. A bounty hunter who built a career on the belief that everyone deserves a second chance because he had needed one so desperately himself. A husband who loved one woman so completely that losing her nearly took him with her. A man who is still, at 72, trying to figure out how to be at peace with everything he has been and everything he has lost. We do not know if he will ever fully get there, but we are rooting for him. We watch people like Dog Chapman from a distance and we think we understand them. We see the tough exterior, the big personality, the carefully constructed image, and we make our judgments. But the real story is always underneath all of that. The real story is always a person trying to survive their own life, carrying their losses, loving the people they have been given, getting it wrong sometimes, and trying to get it right the next time. Dog Chapman is not a perfect man. He would be the first to tell you so. But he is a man who has refused, through everything, to stop believing that grace is real. And on his hardest days, that has been enough. If you watched Dog the Bounty Hunter with someone you loved on a Tuesday night and felt like that family was part of your own, leave us a comment below and tell us what you remember. We read every single one. And if you believe these stories deserve to be told with honesty and depth, rather than just headlines, subscribe to our channel. There are so many more lives worth looking at closely. Stay with us.